So, everyone, we had a fantastic opening panel talking about AI, data, trust. I think my key takeaway from that was, if your kid asks you what skill should they learn, the answer is compliance. And ultimately, that if you can't trust your data, you definitely can't trust an agentic AI. But right now, to talk to us about how industry can lead the change in driving smart data policy, John Penrose.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much. Is that working for height for the microphone? Wonderful, thank you. Well, look, firstly, good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me. It's good to be back talking about something I've been supporting and promoting for years, and that's how we can make our economy work better by cutting friction, trusting markets, and letting innovation do its thing. I suspect I am preaching to the choir about all of that, but I want to try and look a little bit ahead as well. As you just heard, I'm John Penrose. I was an MP until the last election, and in Westminster I spent far too much time arguing that we can't regulate our way to prosperity, and now I spend most of my time outside Westminster trying to prove that same point in other ways as well. Which brings us neatly to smart data. Because if you want an example of how good regulation could be proportionate, enabling, and genuinely pro-growth, then smart data has to be it. It should be the next big supply-side reform, a new piece of market infrastructure, a data-sharing framework that can make competition sharper, services cheaper, and innovation faster across almost every sector of the economy and every part of the country. Handled right, it's an engine for growth. Handled badly, it's just a spreadsheet with a slogan on top. So the challenge for all of us is, how do we make sure we're on the right side of that dividing line? Let's start with where we are. The Data Use and Access Act 2025 is live. The government can now mandate smart data schemes across different sectors with an interface body or implementation entity to run the pipes and the plumbing. The FCA is close to designating the first one of those, the Open Banking Future Entity, and it will inevitably be precedent-setting for good or ill. It'll establish a model for governance, process, and funding, a template that future schemes could follow. So if we get it right, we can set ourselves up for 20 years of innovation, competition, and growth. If we get it wrong, we'll end up with bureaucracy, drift, and rising costs, what the Prime Minister calls the tepid bath of managed decline. So, how do we get it right? Well, I think there are three key points. First, smart data has to be industry-led. Secondly, keep it simple, stupid, make it as simple as possible. And thirdly, finally, it has to be trusted, because without public confidence, the rest, frankly, doesn't matter. So to start with the first, industry-led. And to be clear, industry-led does not mean unregulated. Every market is always a man-made operation, everything from property rights on upwards, and this is no different. It means, if we get it right, that the rules of the game are clear, but players are free to play. Think back to open banking. The CMA created a framework for delivering the APIs, the security standards, but didn't try and dictate what products people could build within that new regulatory regime. And that freedom is why the UK's fintech centre absolutely exploded in the aftermath. Lots of different fintechs and a wave of innovators turning data into better products and smarter services. And that's what we should be replicating next across other sectors, not some bureaucratic quango with endless strategies and slide decks that's unwilling to relinquish control but unable to take quick or clear decisions. And part of getting it right, therefore, is giving the industry, or giving all industries, the space to move fast. Like the Smart Data Accelerator, bringing together innovators, regulators, and investors to scope and design new schemes, pilot them safely, and learn quickly. Or CFIT, where coalitions of firms can experiment and share results so they don't have to reinvent the wheel each time. Or the Smart Data Group, providing the infrastructure and governance for voluntary market-driven schemes. So they have workable frameworks that keep everything just as safe, interoperable, and accountable as the schemes mandated in the Data Act. And those commercial schemes will be just as important as, perhaps even more important than, the regulator-mandated ones for delivering the smart data economy, because they create a parallel path for Britain to move faster in more sectors without having to wait for a 400-page rulebook from Whitehall in every case. So if we're serious about becoming a world leader in interoperable data sharing, we're going to need both, mandated and voluntary. Because smart data isn't about central control. It's about trusted technologies, opening markets, empowering consumers and small businesses, and driving productivity. Done right, smart data isn't just a regulatory project, it's an entire economic strategy. Now, point 2, making smart data as simple as possible. Keep it simple, stupid in the vernacular. Let me give a practical example. In energy, we've already seen how smart data could help consumers manage consumption and costs. That's happening already. But imagine being able to share your usage data with a trusted third party who finds you a better tariff, manages your smart meter settings, and even optimizes when you charge your EV. That's efficiency and decarbonisation in one go, and it's easy, and it's simple, and it's quick. Or think about SMEs, the lifeblood of the economy. Right now, getting credit or insurance can take weeks because data is scattered across multiple different systems. Smart data could change that overnight. A small retailer could share verified transaction and energy data to get an instant, accurate credit decision. A construction firm could prove compliance across safety and insurance databases in seconds. That's proper growth from the ground up. Again, simple, convenient, fast. But those things only happen if smart data is simple by design. You don't need, we can't afford 50 different schemes run by 50 different committees. We need one consistent infrastructure that every sector uses to power their individual smart data scheme, with a shared consent journey, a shared technical standard, a shared trust framework. Now, each sector, whether it's energy or telecoms or digital markets, they'll all probably need their own specific schemes to reflect the different starting points of data structures, data ownership, and incumbency in each industry, with governance and ring-fenced funding to match. But the core plumbing, the interface body, and the interoperability layer should be the same. Otherwise, we'll have the worst of both worlds: expensive duplication, massive complexity, endless certification paperwork. And let's be honest, we're not short of bureaucracy in this country, are we? So let's not add to it if we can avoid it. And delivering simplicity will need clarity and certainty too, because industry is only going to invest if it knows the rules won't change halfway through. That's why there should be an investable timetable. Government should publish it now, today, so everybody knows which sectors, which industries are coming in what order, when consultations are going to start, when designations are going to happen, when testing will begin. That kind of transparency attracts capital. It allows business leaders and teams to plan ahead with confidence. And if we do that, we will succeed, because uncertainty, if none of those things are known, uncertainty kills investment faster than any tax rise you can think of. And now, the third point I mentioned, trust. I suspect you all get it, but it's worth saying anyway. If consumers and customers don't trust the new data systems, they're just not going to use them. It's as simple as that. So smart data has to be safe by design. That means consent has to be clear, revocable, and portable. Data must be secure, accredited, and used only for the agreed purposes. And oversight has to be transparent, so that if something goes wrong, users should know exactly where to go for redress, and that process needs to be fast, cheap, and effective too. So trust isn't a side issue, it's the main event. Absolutely central, because if smart data becomes perceived as just another big tech grabs your data moment, we're all finished before we begin. But if it's seen as giving people control over their information and power to act on it, then it can take off. Now, this isn't theory. This isn't something that I just dreamt up in my bath. It's already been proven before. In open banking, consumer trust started low. But once people saw that the system worked, was secure, and made their lives easier, then usage exploded. By 2024, over 8 million in the people were using open banking powered services, many of them without even realizing that they were doing it. Not because of slogans, but just because the experience worked. So trust by design isn't optional, it's right at the center of the business model. Now, let's look a little bit ahead. The Smart Data Council will soon relaunch. Not quite sure when. It's been promised for a while. We hope very soon. The new Smart Data Strategy is expected any day now. Ditto. Not quite sure when. We hope very soon. I mentioned earlier that the FCA's first designation will likely create a template for everything else that follows, shaping how smart data evolves over the next 10 years in industries like energy and telecoms or pensions, deciding how open, competitive and successful the new ecosystem becomes. Or not. Because while the opportunity is huge, so is the challenge. The Department for Business and Trade's last strategy, a couple of years ago, under the last government, promised 20 sector schemes, 20 industries to be covered by 2035. It was actually pretty ambitious in scale and scope, but it was way too slow in pace. While we've been jogging along, other companies have been sprinting. So Australia's consumer data right is rolling out across banking, energy and telecoms. The EU is advancing its Data Act and digital markets frameworks. Singapore, Canada, Japan, even Brazil are all racing to build multi-sector smart data economies at speed. They've learned from our success in open banking and they want some of that. In some areas they're overtaking us fast. So we can't afford to drift. We have to be much, much bolder and more demanding about speed. Now, the Data Act gives us the tools to act and to act fast. If a particular industry and incumbents can't or won't innovate through voluntary schemes, then where necessary, we should and we can, government can, use the powers to mandate it. Because what we're really talking about here, building a national network of interoperable, trusted data flows across the whole economy, isn't just nerdy digital engineering. It is a bit of that, but it's much more than that as well. It's wholesale economic reform. Exactly the kind of supply-side modernization Britain needs to improve our anemic long-term rate of growth. If Rachel Reeves isn't listening or hasn't got spies at this conference, she should have for precisely that reason. It's a lot of the answers that she needs could be right here. So this isn't about cutting spending or raising taxes. This isn't about things that we're going to all hear about in the upcoming autumn budget. Instead, it's about removing frictions, unlocking consumer choice, and letting markets work properly again. That's what smart data does. It takes information out of silos and turns it into competition. It replaces red tape with real-time data. It lets small firms act and think like big ones, and it puts consumers in control. And that's the growth model that Britain could and should, I would argue, become known for. Fast, fair, data-driven, open, modern, and successful. Now, I know that all sounds perhaps a tad ambitious, but it is achievable. I completely believe it's achievable. Government sets the destination, but with a more ambitious timetable. Industry builds the roads and the pipes with industry-led schemes alongside the regulated, mandated ones. And independent governance keeps us all in lane. But we do need, at the same time, to be honest with ourselves and with everybody else about the risks of that journey. What are they? Well, it could easily be captured by incumbents. We will all have seen that with the existing data incumbents in any industry. Nobody likes you losing their data monopoly if they don't have to. It could be fragmentation across sectors. It could be regulatory creep. It could be weak enforcement. If each industry, government department or regulator tries to build their own infrastructure, we'll end up with a patchwork, which is the very opposite of smart data. But if we get it right, Well, the benefits will be felt everywhere, up and down the country, because this isn't just a London policy. Smart data should be a genuinely national growth story, where every part of the country starts and could gain. And it shouldn't even stop at the UK's borders. If we build a trusted, interoperable smart data network, we can export it, just like we did with open banking. And not just the standards, but the products and services of brilliant British fintechs, SMEs, and hundreds or even thousands of future world-leading firms that are just tiny British startups today. So, smart data isn't about government meddling, micromanagement, or control. It's about building the pipes and then letting the market flow. It's about empowering people with their own information so they can make better choices. It's about helping small firms compete on equal terms and giving Britain a competitive edge in the new burgeoning digital economy. Now, if we succeed, and I think we can, then smart data should be invisible, like the power grid or the internet background. We won't think about it, we'll just use it. And it will quietly drive billions of pounds, 27 billion by some estimates, in efficiency, innovation, and growth. That long-term growth rate and productivity growth rate I was talking about just now. But if we fail, we'll drown in bureaucracy, we'll confuse consumers, and we'll scare off investors. So, let's not fail. Let's build an industry-led smart data ecosystem along the lines of what I've just been sketching out. Independent, interoperable, trusted. And let's make sure that when people talk about how Britain reinvented its data economy in future, and they look back at this moment, they'll say, well, we didn't just get it right, we got there first. Because the world isn't waiting, and so nor can we. Thank you all very much. I was told that there might be time for questions. I think we're down to about 1 minute 15, and I'm conscious that I'm standing between everybody and lunch. So we can either do questions or I can chat afterwards, depending on what our excellent chairman feels is best.
I think there's one question from the audience. Anybody?
So the thing which worries me about digital ID is it's a really good example about what can happen with low trust. And because it's got political resonance and baggage attached to it, the trust is even lower than it would otherwise normally be. So I wish that instead of starting off with a grand Tony Blair-driven vision of digital ID, if instead they turn around and say, we're going to make gov.uk portal work really well for you, in a way which none of us really care about the back-end plumbing of it, but it's going to work just better. I think that in 5 years' time, we would have done an awful lot of what they're talking about, and everyone would think it's an absolutely brilliant idea. But as it is, I think they've jumped right in at the deep end, and as a result, I think they're buying themselves a world of trouble.
Couldn't agree more. Well, look, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Smart data is the future of our economy. I love that independent, interoperability, trusted necessity. So look, thank you so much, John. John is around, and I'm sure we'll engage with some personal conversation in any Q&A you might have with him. And go and enjoy your lunches, and we'll see you soon for the Women in Finance piece later on. Okay, thank you very much.